I'm Q Paul, and welcome to Lesson 18 in our series, Spanish for Retirees Living in Mexico. Today I'm going to be introducing you to two new Spanish verbs, and they both mean to know, but they're not interchangeable. You're going to be using them very differently. Here they are. The first one is saber, and you use that one when you want to talk about that you know certain facts or information or how to do something. Now the other one is conocer, and that's if you know people, places, and things. All right, I'm going to go through each one of these verbs one at a time, teach you some basic conjugation, and then how to use it appropriately, give you some examples. We're going to start with saber. We're going to conjugate this in the present tense, first and second person, as usual. Yo sé, I know. Tú sabes, you know. You're going to use saber when you want to ask if someone knows something, some piece of information. This is a really useful verb to just stick on the front of some of your plug-and-play phrases you've already learned in the course. Here's an example. ¿Sabes dónde está mi casa? Do you know where my house is? Sí, lo sé. Yes, I know. Now, you see that little word lo there? Let me talk about that for a second. That lo is like the word it. It's referring to whatever we were talking about. In the last sentence, we were talking about, do you know where my house is? This is like saying, yeah, I know it. I know the matter. I know what we were talking about. I know the information. Now, this can be confusing for English speakers because it doesn't translate well. The other thing that may seem odd to you is the location of the word lo in the sentence. It comes before the verb. So if we translated it literally, it would say, yes, it I know, which doesn't make sense, and that's why we don't do literal translations. Don't let the use of the word lo in this sentence confuse you. I'm going to dedicate the entire next lesson to just this topic. By the end of that lesson, you're not going to have any trouble with this at all. In this particular phrase, saying you know something or don't know something, some people use the lo and some people don't. So if you don't like it for now, just leave it out. You could say yo lo sé, yo sé, no lo sé, no sé. See, isn't that easy? All right, that's enough of that for now. Let's get back to some examples. In this one, you'll see I just put sabes on the front of a phrase I've already learned how to translate in a previous lesson. ¿Sabes si puedo confirmar la reservación? Do you know if I can confirm the reservation? No lo sé. If you want to say you know how to do something, you're going to use the verb saber. You just have to plug in the verb. ¿Sabes cocinar? Do you know how to cook? Yo sé cocinar. I know how to cook. Here are two more examples of that construction. ¿Sabes pintar? Do you know how to paint? ¿Sabes nadar? Do you know how to swim? I'm going to show you another useful way to use the word saber in a sentence, but first I want to talk about the word que, which is spelled Q-U-E, in Spanish. This can have different meanings depending where it is in the sentence and whether or not it has an accent mark. With all the different translations and usages for que, beginning students often get confused, so we're going to simplify it. Que, without an accent, is usually translated as that or which. Que, with an accent, means what, and you'll also see por qué, with an accent, that means why. So we're going to show you an example of using que with an accent and without the accent. First, with the accent, you can ask someone, do you know what? ¿Sabes qué? And without the accent, it's a great sentence starter. ¿Sabes qué? Do you know that? And then all you have to do is just plug in a sentence or a phrase that you already know how to translate from an earlier lesson. Do you know that I went to the beach today? ¿Sabes que fui a la playa hoy? Here's another one. Do you know that I have to go to the bank? ¿Sabes que tengo que ir al banco? All right, that's enough for saber for now. Let's go on to conocer, the other verb that means to know. In the present tense, first and second person, yo conozco, I know, tú conoces, you know. You're going to use this one when you talk about knowing a person, place, or thing, not a fact or information. It's very similar to be familiar with something. For example, if I want to ask someone if they know the song, like they've heard of it, they're familiar with it, I'd ask them, ¿Conoces esta canción? Do you know this song? Now, if I want to ask them if they know the lyrics, that's asking for information, so I would use saber for that. Anytime that you talk about a place like, hey, do you know New York City, or are you familiar with New York City, you're going to use conocer. It's also a way to ask someone if they've been there. So when I ask someone, ¿Conoces Playa del Carmen? I'm asking them, are you familiar with Playa del Carmen, or have you been to Playa del Carmen? All right, let's talk about people. Anytime you ask someone if they know someone, or you say, I know someone, you're always going to use conocer. ¿Conoces a Juan? Do you know Juan? You may have noticed that there's a little A stuck in there between conoces and Juan. That's called the personal a. And when I'm talking about a person, that's why it's called the personal a, then you're going to see that a appear. Here's two examples of the personal a stuck in sentences. Conozco a María. I know Maria. Conoces a mi amigo. You know my friend. Conocer can also mean to meet someone for the first time, not to like have a meeting with them, but the first time you meet them. So, ¿Quieres conocer a mi vecino? Do you want to meet my neighbor? Now you'll notice we didn't conjugate conocer, and that's because we attached it to quieres. We only conjugate the first verb. Well, that's it for today's lesson. I encourage you to go to qru.us and do some of the exercises that are associated with this particular lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to be talking about direct object pronouns and using the verb conocer a little bit more. Hasta luego.